What's going down in Baltimore is your classic maneuvering for a contract, either there or elsewhere, with quarterback Lamar Jackson. He puts the tweet out on Thursday of last week, saying he's not playing. The reports of a grade 2 PCL strain. He says the sprain is more of a grade 3, and then he needs more time to recover. Apologizes to the fans for not being there, and then doesn't travel with the team, even though last week he traveled with the team to Cincinnati for the same exact matchup in Week 18. Well, that has, of course, elicited plenty of reaction from those who have played, currently playing, they're on his current team or not. And throughout the media and the fans, everyone's got an opinion on it. And yesterday, we heard from Michael Vick through the NFL on Fox.
We saw what happened on Thursday when he put out a tweet explaining exactly what is going on with his knee. And this was met with a lot of blowback from some folks, other people saying, good, Lamar finally spoke. The truth of the matter is there is some murky waters right now as far as not only Lamar Jackson, if they win, if he could play next week, but what the future of Lamar Jackson is in Baltimore. I'm a mere reporter. I'm not in that building. But Sean Payton, you have coached several teams over the years. Your thought on the situation?
Yeah, look, I don't like it. And they're in a playoff game. And I get if he's not playing, but this whole tweet out, let me explain my whole medical status. And look, I'm hearing grumblings from a handful of folks there that their teammates that feel like his process has been slower than expected. I just don't like it. The team's more important right now than you. And we appreciate the information on your injury status. You're not playing. I get it. I don't see this player back in Baltimore next year.
Oh, wow.
And I think he'll end up with another club.
Yeah, I look at it, if this team was, 2-15, I could see him not coming back and trying to finish out the season. It just seems that, we all play this game to try to win a Super Bowl. Like, that's the main goal. And if you have a team that's good enough to get to the playoffs, and
you guys, we're not having this conversation. That contract.
But you're not having
you're 3 games.
I understand.
Away.
He's playing the game. I don't know if I would have the balls to do it. I'm being real honest with you. To sit out. But kudos to him. I mean, he's about his business. He figures they don't want to pay him. So,
but Coach say, like you just said, it's the playoffs, man. You 3 games away. Put a brace on it. Get it going.
And look,
put a brace on it. Let's go.
It's hard to say that though.
Right. We don't know if
really
he's not.
I don't know the extent of his injury.
I played the whole season on a sprained MCL. So
yeah, I understand if he's not ready.
Whole season.
But with a lower body injury, he's going to be up in the press box. He's not going to be on the field for me.
Charles.
So there is NFL on Fox with Sean Payton, Charles Woodson, and you heard at the end there, Michael Vick saying put a brace on it. Sean Payton saying he doesn't like all the tweeting with the medical issues in history. Screw that, by the way. If a player wants to put out his medical concerns, absolutely go for it. This veil of secrecy from NFL coaches where he's even right there calling it a lower body injury, screw that. I don't agree with that whatsoever, especially if you disagree with the team that is trying to negotiate with you, that your injury isn't as serious as what you believe it is or what you've been told by a second opinion. I have no reason not to believe Lamar Jackson. But for whatever reason, that entire panel, for the most part, jumps to the idea that he doesn't have a grade 2, but he does have a grade 2, not a grade 3 sprain, which would keep him out longer. And it was the Ravens who put out that he would be back within 3 weeks.
I may need a little more time in our next segment to talk about this a little bit. It's a fascinating topic. First off, just on that television segment alone, refreshing. Refreshing only from the standpoint of I don't think I see people be that honest about someone dealing with an injury that often, especially those who've coached the game, played the game at the highest level. So
we'll pick up
I want to start from that standpoint with that discussion and the fact that both Sean Payton and Michael Vick were even willing to say it when no one else will say it.
Those in the Ravens organization that don't like it, we don't have a name attached to their quotes. Meanwhile, post-game, other players did say they backed Lamar Jackson and what happened with this, why he didn't travel. Details next.
Since day one of 2 weeks to flatten the curve, liberals have been COVID fear-porn nymphomaniacs. They love everything about COVID hysteria, especially Hollywood liberals, from preaching safer at home from the comfort of their mansions, remote learning for your peasant kids as theirs had private tutors, and of course, their beloved masks and their even more beloved vaccines. It's an unhealthy obsession that for some has lasted longer than even COVID itself. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Jimmy Fallon performing the variant song.
There was Alpha, then Delta, then Omicron next. But this latest variant might be the best. It's XBB.1.5. Another brand of COVID-19 has arrived. It's a new strain, but it isn't the same. Sounds more like Elon Musk's his name. It's XBB.1.5.
So there's cringeworthy, and then there's that, which is even worse. But speaking of cringe, this list of losers wouldn't live up to its name if it didn't feature the patriarch, the grandfather, the elder loser himself, Joe Biden.
And here we have folks from the Salvation Army who also have been murdered. So we're only
So I'm not really sure what happened there. I'm not sure if Joe was confused as to who he was meeting, mistaking the man for a Secret Service agent, or if he just wanted to let the guy from the Salvation Army know he's met the Secret Service, who is tasked with following him literally everywhere. I'm just really not sure, but it sure is something. But not only is Joe awfully confused, he's also one big sleepy hypocrite.
Because there can no longer be any question, none. In today's interconnected world, we cannot wall ourselves off from shared problems. We are stronger and better when we work together.
We cannot wall ourselves off to protect our border or our national security, but we sure as hell can fork over $500,000 to build a wall around Joe's Delaware beach house. Isn't that just dandy, folks? But speaking of brain damage, a lot of Democrats beyond Joe suffer from it, but this week the former bartender taught us gas stoves are to blame. No, really. Now look, as much as I would like to dog on AOC for this, I really can't, because if there is one person who knows a thing or two about brain damage, it is most certainly Miss Ocasio-Cortez. If a gas stove is what did that to her, shoot, I'll go electric or unicorn dust or whatever these green hairs prefer now to save my brain from whatever damages hers. You betcha I will. Those are my losers of the week. God bless them.
Buccaneers and Cowboys tonight, the final game of Wildcard weekend. OutKick 360. Glad you're with us. Jason McCourty will be with us from Good Morning Football on NFL Network. He joins us in 20 minutes. Quickly, the headlines. Tua Tagovailoa is back as the starting quarterback next season, according to Chris Greer, general manager for the Dolphins. We'll dive into that. We'll tell you about the injury report for tonight's matchup and a crazy stat involving wins for the Cowboys and wins for Tom Brady over the span of Brady's career. Chad, we're not discussing a Ravens win, and we're not discussing Lamar Jackson proving to everyone that he's worth the fully guaranteed money that he sought this past offseason, and he goes into another year where he could potentially be franchised, he could be released, he could be traded. All different things are on the table for the Ravens as they try to figure out where they're going to go to next.
Yeah, we just played some footage from Fox where Sean Payton is saying he's not going to be a part of the Ravens next year. He doesn't believe in talking to people around that team. And then you got Mike Vick saying, put a brace on it and go play. This all comes after, too. Sammy Watkins had a very long answer to a reporter this weekend about Lamar Jackson, where he's basically almost begging him to come play. You know, saying, hey, we're all out here. There's guys banged up. We'd love for our leader to be here. I think we win this game if you give it a go. But also kind of hedging by saying, I don't know how hurt he is, so if he's not going to play, I guess he's hurt. This sort of weird dance around it with, could he have given it a go if he really wanted to? Is this just a business move from Lamar Jackson? I started by saying I think it's refreshing that these guys on Fox said it, what a lot of people won't. It is difficult to speculate on injury, but you do have Mike Vick saying I played an entire season with a sprained MCL. Now, I don't know, what is it, PCL injury with Lamar Jackson versus MCL injury. Everybody's pain threshold is different, this and that. I understand it. I kind of lean into I think he's making a business decision. Well, I think he could have rushed back.
It's both, but
tried to play.
No one's jumping to bash him on Friday or on Thursday when he sent out the tweet that he didn't go to the game. That's what brought on this attention.
Yeah, now the tweet thing, I think Sean Payton's being very, very old school when he says that. I'm with you on that. If I'm in a situation where if I feel like I'm legitimately hurt and I feel like my organization isn't protecting me by releasing information and allowing a lot of speculation to go on about me dogging it in some way.
Which was he could be back within 3 weeks.
Yeah, then I don't blame him for wanting to come out and say, no, this is what's going on. Here's what the rehab's been. You know, if you want to lay all that out there, I can't fault a guy for wanting to set the record straight and to put information out there when everyone else refuses to do it. I also think, sort of like the Kyler Murray situation, there's enough I've heard from people around the Ravens, Sammy Watkins being one of them, that leads me to believe that if Lamar Jackson really wanted to play in this game, he could have played. Now, we can get into the nuance of, well, what's going on in the negotiation before the season? What's he being told by his agent? What's really best for Lamar Jackson long term? All of those things. I have a tendency to default to, you're in the playoffs.
Right.
It's a team sport still. If you got a chance to win a playoff game and make a run in the playoffs, you do everything you possibly can to play. I don't know if he's done that or not. But if there's any doubt that he could have played and he didn't, that's a bad look for Lamar Jackson. And I don't like it. And if I'm the Ravens and they feel that way, I don't like it if I'm the Ravens. I mean, he's ultimately clearly going to do what's best for him long term, and he wants to get that big contract, and he's going to get it from someone.
Yes.
But I would understand his teammates having a hard time with that. Well, I can understand what Mike Vick is saying with it also.
Some do, some don't. Because Dobbins and you've got Marcus Peters who say, number one, if he plays, we're winning the game. I mean, that's after Huntley did everything possible to keep them in the playoff hunt and played with a shoulder issue and a wrist issue last night. Their starting quarterback last night, Tyler Huntley, was thrown under the bus by the starting running back who said, yeah, if Lamar plays, we win. And he's right. He's not wrong. But, I mean, he's being just as vocal on that end. There is – and by the way, he traveled all season. He was in Cincinnati last week, so something went down to where, you know, he felt like he was going to be the scapegoat if they fell again in the postseason. They haven't won a postseason game since 2015. They've outgained their last 4 playoff opponents by 120 yards, including last night, and they're 1-3 in their last 4 postseason games. That win was here in Nashville against the Tennessee Titans by starting quarterback Lamar Jackson. I think he views it as, of course, a negotiation/money issue. But also, I mean, the guy's got to be healthy in order to do that. And if he feels like he's being told he's got to play and he's healthier than what he's being told based on second opinion, and, oh, by the way, he represents himself. He cut off the negotiations on his own prior to the start of the season. What he wants is to get a franchise tag at worst. And at best, he gets a contract either in Baltimore or somewhere else this offseason. So he's getting upwards of $45 to $50 million next year, regardless of where he plays, as long as he's healthy. So, yeah, it's a business move, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's lying about it when he was very detailed in what he put out on Twitter.
Yeah.
And guess who's not answering questions? The Baltimore Ravens. John Harbaugh's not answering anything in regards to the injury. So speak up if he's lying.
Well, here's what's going to happen now, and it's going to piss a lot of people off, and I get it. There's going to be a lot of anonymous reporting about it. There's going to be Ravens coaches, general manager, players that are going to speak on the record, but anonymously, and they're going to question Lamar Jackson's heart. They're going to question Lamar Jackson's pain threshold. They're going to poke a lot of holes in him late in the season, and that's what's going to go on now. And Lamar can continue to tweet out his side of whatever's going on. I'll say this, too. He didn't do a lot of goodwill for himself by not traveling with the team and being there on the sideline to support them in this game. Perception is going to be, quite frankly, and maybe rightfully so, that he did a very selfish thing in doing what he did. And not going all of a sudden, I don't care if you're at a riff with with management or whoever, it's a bad look. He should have been there on the side. I'm not saying that he had to play. If he's physically not able to play or he feels that way, don't play. But it's weird that he wasn't there. And maybe something awful happened from the organization towards him that led to this, and maybe that all comes out in the wash one day. But I do think it was bad that he wasn't there for his teammates.
Yeah, and all the detail that Harbaugh has given was whenever they asked, when he would be back. Originally, he said days to weeks was the detail of that, and then that's kind of the barometer of he's going to be back at practice. Is he going to be back on the game? Well, you start judging that based on what the Ravens were putting out, and for the first time, we heard from Lamar Jackson on what he felt he was dealing with. We still don't know why he didn't go. When he was traveling last week, everyone's pointing to a contract dispute, but, I mean, it's not like he was playing either way. So if he goes, he still sits out. And really no one's talking about it because he just chose to travel. Not that he sat out and said he had a further issue with the same need that the Ravens were apparently saying was not as big of an issue as he was making it out to be.
Yeah, and in the end...
And here we go. Here we go again with this.
In the end, the one thing that cost the Ravens the game is the one play that Lamar Jackson probably doesn't make. Right? I mean, I'm saying, and I've given Huntley credit here. He had them in position to pull off a win over the defending AFC champs on the road, and they're about to punch it in from a yard out, and he does something stupid, and it's a play that Lamar Jackson probably doesn't have happen to him, and the Ravens go in there and win the game.
Chris Greer says Tua is their quarterback. I found it really interesting with all of the news and notes, and you mentioned anonymous sourcing, immediately in what could be Brady's final game in Tampa tonight. The next teams that are on a list, a very short list of teams that would be interested in pursuing him, and the Dolphins were not listed. After last season, with all the we just heard from Sean Payton, all of the speculation that they were going to team up and go to Miami, today Chris Greer comes out and says Tua's our quarterback. They're going to keep the options open about the fifth-year option, which is a possibility, about a contract extension, tag, all of it. And he's coming off of 2 confirmed NFL concussions. But, I mean, we saw him have 3. And they shut him down for the end of the season, didn't travel to Buffalo because you've got to be cleared through concussion protocol to do it. And speaking with doctors, Greer says, we're moving forward with Tua. They say he's going to be 100% next season.
I wonder if they're at all worried about, with all the talk about concussions in the NFL and protecting quarterbacks and everything, and the fact that they're involved in this other lawsuit that's separate of that, I wonder if there's any thinking about, we're just going to look terrible if we just get rid of this guy and move forward because he's had these terrible concussions. Well, I mean, and we can't trust his injury history now.
Or just because teams will cut a player as soon as he's, physically able to pass a physical, even coming off a concussion. So I don't know if that's, I wouldn't perceive it that way.
No, but I'm saying that there's going to be people that perceive it as, they threw this guy out to the Wolves and they didn't do what's right by him. The league didn't when he had the one concussion that wasn't called, and the moment he passed the physical, they cut him. I mean, someone's gonna argue that. You got to do what's best for your organization within the rules. I mean, I'm not arguing for them to do that because of optics, but Hutton, it's such a weird decision to me
it's just
to just blanket say, he's the guy, when you have this history that I don't know why they would do it.
Well, they
don't have a great secondary option right now, unless it's go big for someone that's out there and possibly available.
Well, they know how good they were when he was healthy. and what he did within that passing game. So, I mean, it's just so I'm assuming they're going to bring back Bridgewater. You know, Thompson, started 4 games this year total, counting yesterday in Buffalo. It's tricky because they're close. They're really close. But you can't count on Tua now because of they say that, you know, one concussion leads to your next one. And with the track record now and the protocols that are in place, I mean, there's no way you can go in with just him believing, Chris Greer, believing that Tua's the guy and he's your 18-week starter. You have to prepare better than what they did this year, and they tried to with Bridgewater, but they did that because they weren't sold on Tua, not because of an injury history.
So many drops yesterday. Talking about Skylar Thompson, did not do him any favors. That receiving core that's been really good this year with some key drops, starting with the first drive of the game on a deep ball. They needed those receivers to be great, and they were not.
Giants came up with the big plays late to beat Minnesota. I don't think anyone's shocked by this, but there are that people are pointing to this as the biggest upset of the weekend. And, you know, the Giants going on the road and winning against a 13-win team, okay, and doing it with Daniel Jones, the forgotten prove-it quarterback of 2022-23, and doing it with Saquon Barkley, who's out to prove a point to get the money and prove that he's worth it. Brian Daboll has done an incredible job because I think the common average football fan, can they name 6 players on the Giants roster today?
Probably not.
That's crazy considering they're one of the 8 teams remaining in the league.
So by seeding, it was the biggest upset of the week. The biggest upset of the week is the Jags falling behind 27-0 and coming back. Even as they were a home underdog in the game on Saturday night. That's the biggest upset. He's the coach of the year. I mean, when you look at him. Now, here's what I want to talk about. What the hell is Kirk Cousins doing on 4th and 8? I mean, that was not even let's throw a screen and have guys set up where you can run and get it.
How are they not trying to get that to Jefferson, too?
I have no idea what the thought. Did he think it was 3rd down?
He said he didn't like the look he had for Jefferson, so he checked it. It was Kirk Cousins being Kirk Cousins. 1-4 in the postseason.
Ooh, that was bad. All year, the Vikings, even 33-0, all the talk against the Colts. Here's the Vikings.
Yeah.
Here's Kirk Cousins. Not that good. They're going to disappoint. And every time they answered the bell, they had big win after big win. Kirk Cousins put up huge numbers. Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in football. Here they come again with another comeback. And then to get to this point and have the ball with a chance to go down and do something with it late. On 4th and 8, you throw 2-3 yards with a guy clearly there to tackle him.
Nowhere to go.
I mean, if you see a guy wide open with room to run in front of him is one thing. Just an odd decision by a veteran guy that the only thing I could think is, did he in the moment just black out mentally and think it's 3rd down and not 4th down? Did he forget the down and distance situation?
That's even worse, though.
On that play. And he's not going to admit it now. But in the moment, he just saw a guy open and threw it and wasn't thinking about what the down was. It's bad either way.
Bengals win the rematch. Giants upset the Vikings. Bills hold on after the Dolphins rally. And the 49ers beat the Seahawks. Seattle's up 17-16 at halftime. And then Brock Purdy and the offense, with so many different weapons and how we go about beating a team on top of that defense. Chad, I think we're going to see them in Glendale, San Fran. I think Purdy's about to take over the entire topic line of Sports Talk Radio.
Preseason, I had Bills versus Packers in the Super Bowl. Right before the playoffs started, I changed that to Bills versus 49ers. After this weekend's game, I'm feeling even better about that with the 49ers because this is not – Brock Purdy is still going to go on more of a run. This run has been taking place, though. This is not the start. He's mid-run this season, and it's the start of something even bigger, I think, with him and the 49ers. This is no fluke anymore.
He's 7-0
with his play.
Yeah, he's 7-0. He has that first playoff win under his belt, and the team is 11-0 right now as they go into the divisional round. Coming up, Jason McCourty will join us, co-host of Good Morning Football. He was on the call for Jacksonville and L.A., where the Jags made that big comeback over the Chargers. We'll chat about his vantage point there when he saw everything turn, the start for Trevor Lawrence versus how it ended, what this means for the Chargers and their window of opportunity, being one of the media darlings in the preseason, and now we're pointing at them as one of the biggest losers of the first weekend of the NFL and the postseason runs. McCourty is next on OutKick 360.
Another edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. Happy to be joined by my buddy from the Sporting News, Bill Bender. It feels like it's been about a day since I have seen Bill, which is the case since we were out there in rainy California. Bill, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, we didn't get tanned. We did not get a tan in sunny LA. We got rained on all week, didn't we?
That was depressing. Like, I go out there and I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be sunny. It's going to be California. It's going to be nice. No, it turns out it's raining. We're getting drenched during the post-game ceremonies on the field. I don't know. Whoever came up with the idea for that stadium did not think about the rain that would come in sideways.
No, it was a interesting weekend for sure. I'm glad you and I got to connect a little bit and go to media day, and then the game. I don't know what to talk about. You start. I've been using the analogy as like you brought Cinderella to the final, and you ended up watching Carrie.
Yeah, is it? I mean, in looking back on it and how everything plays out, I think if Michigan beats TCU, we get a better game, in the final. But turns out that TCU had their number, and you go into this matchup with Georgia, and they're just such a dominant football team from the offensive line, the defensive line, the wide receivers, you name it, and you look at TCU and they had their flaws. And I don't even think Kendre Miller being a running back for TCU would have done anything for the Horned Frogs. I just think they're Jalen Carter and what Georgia's defensive line was able to do. I think it just showed throughout the season that they just wrapped up what they had done for the 13 games prior.
Yeah, right off the bat, there was a false start. And after the game, Sonny Dykes said, we'd only had 3 false starts the whole season. So right off the bat, there's nerves. You heard him talk about how they overran things, may have, missed assignments, breakdowns, and you can't have that many. And it showed, they had multiple, and you can't have that against a team that's a heavyweight like Georgia. That's been there, done that. Their execution in the first quarter, especially on offense, was unbelievable, especially with Bennett. And honestly, I thought this game was probably, and this is horrible to say, I thought it was probably over at 17-7.
I don't disagree. It got so out of hand, you started wondering, okay, what's going to be the title to your story? It just didn't feel like it was going to be close, no matter what TCU did. And I give credit to how the game was set up and played, and the atmosphere and whatnot. TCU fans traveled well. Georgia fans traveled well. It made for a fun environment. I think when you look at the game, though, Georgia is just a dominating force. And I want your opinion on this. We use the word dynasty a lot. I think in college basketball, I think in baseball, I think in football, we use it a lot, NFL. Is Georgia at that mark yet, or would they need to win another one in the next 2 years to maybe set up the whole dynasty conversation? Or are we here with the back-to-back titles?
I think we're here because, so they'll be our lifetime, I think, the 4th team to have a chance to go for a three-peat. And I go look at those 3 teams, and I was talking about this earlier today with somebody. Nebraska won back-to-back with Osborne, and then that 3rd year, we all know where we were when Arizona State beat them.
Glad you're with us across the OutKick network. We're throwing Hutton with you. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. The Arizona Cardinals have hired Monty Ossenfort as their next general manager. That, according to NFL Network, Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero. He is the director of pro personnel for the Tennessee Titans, or was, with the John Robinson staff. He was granted permission to interview with the Cardinals. He lands that job. He also interviewed here in Nashville for the open position. Titans fall 7 straight out of the playoffs, and Jacksonville gets in, and they win in a big comeback at home against the Chargers. Jason McCourty was there for the radio call. You can catch him every morning on Good Morning Football. J-Mac, always great to catch up with you, man. Hope you and the family are doing well, and what a crazy wildcard weekend, man.
Yeah, it was insane. I was at that game against the Chargers. I was also at the game the week before when Jacksonville hosted the Tennessee Titans for us to see who was going to win that division and playing this wild card game. But, I mean, it scores 27-0. I'm calling the game with Iron Eagle, and we're up there in the booth, and it's just like, my goodness, this is going to be a tough second half finding things to talk about because this game is pretty much over. And then Jacksonville goes down there and scores right before half. I remember talking to Tony Baselli at halftime. He was like, hey, we've been in this position before. We're down 17 2 other times in the season. We're able to come back in the second half. And Jacksonville did that. And obviously, it was a huge collapse by the Chargers on their end. There was a 3rd and 1 early in that game. Herbert missed Keenan Allen on a would-be touchdown on 3rd down. And then obviously a missed field goal. Joey Bosa slamming his helmet. So everything kind of went downhill, went wrong for the Chargers. But for Jacksonville to be able to steady the ship, go in there at halftime and make adjustments, but still to have the belief that you were going to go out there in the second half and be able to string enough plays together to make the comeback was pretty impressive.
Jason McCourty, our guest here on OutKick 360. What can that do for Trevor Lawrence? And knowing that one thing I noticed watching the game before I hopped in the car, Jason, was he was still leading on the sideline despite playing awful in that first half. And then he pulls that comeback. There's true belief with him now, but he also, Chad and I were discussing, like the perception of Herbert and Lawrence have now flipped for me on expectation.
Yeah, I'm not going to say they flipped. Both of these guys, I mean, when you watch, especially Justin Herbert in that first half, some of the throws he was making are just so impressive. A sidearm throw to hit his tight end, Gerald Everett. They're both so talented. But when you talk about Trevor Lawrence's confidence level, the one thing he said this year compared to last year was that Doug Peterson and his staff was instilling the confidence and belief in him. And he had become more vocal, willing to step out and lead from in front and do that. And when you go through an entire season, you have the comebacks they had. But on top of that, you face the adversity that they faced last year. And to be able to overcome all of that, I think for those guys, that first half was kind of a microcosm of their season. They lost. They were 2-6 early on in the season. They were kind of down and out, losing those close games. And then you get in there at halftime, and because of everything that transpired during the season, there was a ton of belief. But for a young quarterback to make that many mistakes in the first half and then to be able to rebound, I mean, that's a huge confidence boost going into this divisional round and even for them, obviously, going into next season as well.
And, Jason, how about the Jags defense? Because I'm thinking those 4 interceptions in the first half, all of the opportunities that they were put in, that the Chargers were handed in that game, I thought the defense responded well to be 27-0 at that point after all those mistakes. It could have been a lot worse, I guess, is what I'm thinking when that happened. What'd you make of the Jags' defensive effort given the horrible circumstances?
They kept swinging, and they made adjustments in the second half. Early on, it seemed like every single 3rd down, they were playing zone. Keenan Allen was going right to the sticks, catching a pass, and it was 1st and 10 for the Chargers. And we saw in the second half, they brought pressure. They were able to kind of make Herbert a little bit more uncomfortable. And the amazing thing is to be down 27-0 and on defense not to create any turnovers and still be able to win the game. And the second half, they only gave up 3 points. And that allowed them to be able to make a comeback. And Roy Robertson Harrison, he was just all over the place all night, whether it was a tackle for a loss, whether it was batting the pass down or hitting Herbert. He just was a force to be reckoned with. And that front that they have in Jacksonville with Trayvon Walker and then obviously Josh Allen and him in the middle, and this is after losing Smoot. I mean, those guys truly believe that they can go out there and wreck a game. And Foye Oluokun is just, I mean, to lead the league in tackles 2 seasons in a row is just a machine out there. So they definitely stepped up. And 5 turnovers, and you're still in the game. That's a huge credit to the defense.
I thought it was a pretty clear false start that was missed by the officiating crew. But what did you make of Joey Bosa's reaction to that? Slinging the helmet, costing his team what turned out to be the 2-point conversion that was the difference in the end after the field goal.
A rough night for Joey Bosa. Obviously, not only the slam bang of the helmet and then Doug Peterson going for 2, which he might have went for anyway, but that made it an easy decision. But earlier in the game, he had an offsides penalty that was kind of questionable as well, that they got a sack on 3rd down that ended up giving them a new set of downs that put points on the board. And then he gets a 15-yard penalty there when he says something to the official. And it definitely looked like a false start. And I think throughout the wild card week, and we saw many plays like that throughout the season, where tackles are kind of getting out early to be able to pass block against those guys. And it's extremely frustrating. But at that point in the game, I think he'll tell you that, anybody can tell you, like, you just can't lose your composure to that extent, to slam the helmet in the field to play. I mean, if he takes 3 more steps and gets to the sideline and then slams his helmet, it's shown all over TV and everybody will say what they need to say, but there's no penalty. You have to be able in that moment to do that. Those are the differences, those type of mistakes and decisions between going on to the next round or booking your vacation and going on a nice trip somewhere.
Which of the quarterbacks that got their first playoff win impressed you the most, that you're saying, hey, I'm riding with him first? We're talking about Trevor Lawrence, but Brock Purdy, of course, Daniel Jones yesterday.
Yeah, it would have to be Daniel Jones for me. And obviously what Brock Purdy is doing, a rookie 7th-round draft pick, and now just continuing to show up and show out throughout the end of the season. But Daniel Jones, he was the guy that everybody wrote off. And this season we came in, and I remember being on the show all summer, we're talking about what does Daniel Jones have to do to earn a contract extension from the New York Giants and to be considered their franchise quarterback. And throughout the season at times it was like, all right, it's the Saquon Barkley show, or Brian Daboll's drawing it up where it's extremely easy for Daniel Jones. And then this weekend, we saw him go out there and just impress, whether it was throwing the ball, whether it was rushing the ball. He did everything necessary for them to win that game. And Daniel Jones, a guy that's gone through it since he got drafted out of Duke so high in the draft, and Gettleman kind of got killed for it. And Gettleman's probably sitting down somewhere this weekend watching not only Daniel Jones, but Saquon Barkley, Dexter Lawrence, guys that he drafted, watching them go out there and ball and kind of carry this New York Giants into the playoffs and now into the divisional round. So for sure, Daniel Jones, his first playoff action, just the way he's performed all season, was probably the most impressive.
Discuss for me the pressure. I don't know if it is pressure from the coaching staff on down tonight with Dallas. Prescott's got to prove something tonight. He's got a great opportunity. He's right there, and can he take them to the next level? Meanwhile, McCarthy knows Sean Payton's sitting out there, and Jerry Jones loves the guy.
Yeah, everyone's talking about it. You can't escape it. And Dak Prescott has to just go out there and perform. And I think obviously he's thrown a ton of interceptions this season, and we've all focused on that leading the NFL. And what we saw this weekend, Josh Allen, he threw a ton of interceptions, but also threw some nice passes and some bombs to give his team the lead, and they walk away with a win. And one of their slogans is not how you win, it's if you win at this point in the season. And I think the same thing applies for Dallas. And it's so crazy. You look at Sean Payton, you look at Mike McCarthy, both of them won Super Bowl with Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Their records and a lot of things that they've accomplished, they match up.
Yes.
And now we're looking at McCarthy and we're criticizing, we're saying all of these things, back-to-back 12-win seasons. But like you said, what Dallas does in the playoffs is what really matters. They haven't been able to do so since the 90s, 20-something odd seasons, since a playoff win. So everybody's watching that. And I think you just want to see them go out there and perform. You don't want to see any major coaching mistakes. You don't want to see Dak with a pick six at a crucial part in the game. They're going against a Tampa Bay team, obviously, who has Tom Brady, who we all consider the GOAT, in which he is. But it's a Tampa Bay team that hasn't played well this season. Dallas is the team that has more talent, is the better one. Can they show up tonight in prime time under the lights and be able to show up and get the victory?
It is amazing that Tom Brady is playing in a playoff game tonight, and all the conversation is around Dak Prescott and the pressure on him. What do you think about Brady this season? Well, watching him with Tampa Bay, what you've seen from his body language, what you've seen the last couple of weeks as he's getting ready to play in a game where his team's hosting a wild card playoff game tonight.
Brady's a winner, and he wants to win at all costs. He's competitive as hell. He's going to put all the work in. And sometimes you see that throughout the course of the game. You see his frustrations. We've seen him throughout the season slamming the surface, going off on his teammates. And that's all to try to rise the level of play of everybody around him. We watch him do that for his entire career in New England. We would always talk about, and the media, even being on his team, you talk about sometimes the lack of weapons that he would have on the outside compared to what some of the other primetime quarterbacks have. And he continues to bring those guys up. And Brady is still playing at an extremely high level. When you watch him play the game, obviously against the Carolina Panthers late in this season, we watch him hit Mike Evans for 3 touchdowns, goes off over 400 yards passing. It's just incredible to see him at his age be able to play at such a high level. And this is kind of where he shines the brightest. Playoffs, I think it's 35 playoff wins, which is more than so many other teams and everything in the playoffs right now. And he continues to thrive. So it's going to be exciting no matter who's on his team, how they played this year. When it gets to this point in the year, everybody's watching Tom Brady, and expectation is extremely high. If it gets to the fourth quarter and Tampa Bay has the ball and they have an opportunity to go win, everybody is watching on their couch, assuming that Brady's going to go down there and get whatever it is they need.
What do you think happened with Lamar Jackson not traveling?
That I'm very curious of. I saw Snoop Huntley after the game made mention that he wished that Lamar was able to come. And when you hear that, we can kind of assume and make up all types of things. He was in Cincinnati the week before for the last game of the season. It's beyond me why not. And we talked about it this morning. When a guy's injured, they don't always travel. So there's times where you're injured. It might be in your best interest because of your injury, or it just may be kind of what the team does. Injured guys don't travel. But in this case, Lamar had been traveling, and it was even talked about that last game of the season, how much of a help he was to Brown and Huntley on the sideline. So very peculiar to me of why he wouldn't be there. I can't imagine he didn't want to be there, but I don't want to assume and say, oh, the Ravens didn't allow him to go. And obviously, we saw everything that transpired, him putting out the tweets talking about his injury, the coaching staff, Harbaugh, as the month went on, the tone kind of changed to this past week where it was just like, oh, there's. So he took it upon himself to give an update. And there was a lot of chatter, especially of former players, some saying, hey, put a brace on it and go. Michael Vick has said that. Charles Woodson, those guys are talking about just go. And it's like at the same time, for Lamar Jackson, if your knee doesn't feel right and you don't feel like you can go, then of course not. Don't go out there and sacrifice your body. And I've done that. A lot of players that have played this game have done out there, have taken medicine, have done all types of things to go play. But that doesn't mean that it's the only way. And because maybe I did it or the next guy did it, means that Lamar Jackson has to do it. He has to look out for himself as well as his teammates and the organization. But it's a decision that only he can make, and he's the only one that can determine, hey, my knee is okay and I can go play, or no, it just doesn't feel right.
Jason, you're a longtime NFL player, and I'm curious to get the opinion of Jason McCourty, guy who's been in multiple locker rooms and seen all sorts of situations. I want your opinion on this. There is this unwritten rule in the NFL that players don't speak out on other players' business. And if they are doing something to handle business, you don't speak out against them, even at times if it may go against you and the team. And I've noticed a lot of Ravens players have sort of walked that tightrope in discussing Lamar Jackson and what's going on here with his contract. How many instances can you remember in your career where it was really hard not to speak out against someone because you felt like they should have been there helping you and your team win, and you know there's someone that could have helped? I guess I'm asking, is this a relatively common occurrence in the NFL? Because we're seeing a lot more people willing to speak out on it when we get closer to playoff time, like we've seen now with Lamar Jackson. Did you see this happening a lot?
No, I never felt inclined to do so, nor do I think a player ever should. I think it's very easy for somebody else to make comments about this person's situation until they're placed in. And then I remember being in Tennessee when Chris Johnson goes for 2,000 yards my rookie year, and that next year he sits at training camp. And by all means, do your thing. Like, I can't comment on your own personal business, because I could have sat there and said, CJ, you need to show up. We need you here. But it's like, at the same time, from an organizational standpoint, you can look at the Titans in this case and say, well, hey, go ahead and pay him so he can show up. I think Lamar's case, Sammy Watkins came out and said, hey, like, I feel like he should be out here, or whatever exactly his words were. But then you heard Marlon Humphrey said as well, he was just like, Lamar's here. He's in the building. I see him, and he's limping around, and he doesn't look like he can play. So I think it's all in like whose quotes do you want to grab and who do you want to go. But that unwritten rule that you're talking about, Chad, 100%, I firmly believe in it. There's no way I'm going to be in that locker room and call you my brother and then go in the media and say these certain things. Now, if I'm on a team and I'm in a locker room and I feel like, hey, you should be out here helping us, you look healthy enough, then maybe I just walk up to your face and I say it to you like, hey, I know you're going through what you're going through, but we need you out here, and I think you should go out here and maybe play. But I never feel like it's necessary to go out there and say it within the media. And that's even me now working in the media who loves to hear these things because it gives us a whole segment to discuss it on the show. But I firmly believe in that unwritten rule.
That's a great answer. And the direct approach is always the better approach. So I know that's the one you were taking, you're talking about with the player. So what do you think when you see these anonymous quotes from the Cardinals locker room about Kyler Murray and how the money has created a monster and he doesn't prepare? There's a lot of things coming out, but no one's name is attached to it. What do you think when you see these reports?
Put your name on it. I think that's what it's all about. As tight end Ertz that came out in training camp and all of the stuff was going on with the video games and all of that, and he came out and he supported Kyler Murray. I just think as a teammate, if you're going to maybe text a member of the media or say it or do all of that, then you might as well put your name on it. If not, to me, don't say it. But I think one thing that Arizona Cardinals, whether guys are rumored about it, obviously Cliff Kingsbury's in Thailand right now. There's a lot going on within that organization. We saw it kind of hitting his head throughout the season of Kyler going at it. And there's a lot of question marks. And I mean, at this point, you can say what you want about Kyler Murray. He's injured right now, and he's probably not going to be healthy with a knee at the beginning of the season. So Kyler Murray at this point shouldn't even be the focus. They now have a lot of other question marks that they have to figure out. But I think the whole Kyler Murray thing comes all the way back to he gets a contract and there's the paperwork and there's all that's in it that has the study hall and all of that. If you take that out of it, a lot of the stuff that was discussed from the preseason on is never brought up. So I think it's just a whole lot of saga that went on that could have probably been avoided. And the one thing I think within the organization, within a team, as much as possible, if you can keep those things within the locker room, they're better dealt with than when a player has to stand up in front of at their presser in front of a whole bunch of cameras and microphones and answer questions about another player's situation. It's always tough to find the right words, or sometimes guys are trying to dance around it. Some are better than others and they know how to do it. And some guys just flat out have to tell the truth. Jason
McCourty, our guest, are you calling a game this weekend?
No, I'm off. I have basketball games to attend. My kids started up, so I'm finally going to get to catch little kids running around, traveling, double dribbling, and doing every violation in the game of basketball.
How old, Jason, are we talking here with the kids?
We're 10, 7, and 5. So, yes, straight chaos.
I coach my daughter's, help coach someone else, my daughter's 7-year-old basketball team. It's first and second grade. And having done this, I can tell you, first and second grade is too young to start basketball because they can't get it. No one's really getting into first. It's really a fourth, fifth grade type sport because you're right, it is pure chaos. But enjoy it. Enjoy that chaos.
Will do. Any tips, any drills you have, send them my way.
Yeah, we got some cones out yesterday at practice, and we're trying to do the crossover, go to the left hand, and it led to girls just stopping their dribble and actually taking the ball and then going to their left hand and dribbling again with their left hand instead of trying the crossover dribble. So that was fun.
Yep, sounds like it. I can envision it right now.
Enjoy it either way.
Yeah, man. Hey, appreciate the time, man. Always great to catch up and doing a great job on Good Morning Football. And hopefully we'll see you out in Glendale.
Yeah, sounds good. Appreciate it. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, man.
Keep crushing it. You're doing really well.
Jason McCourty, one of the best guys, period. And then solid player here with the Titans, but also throughout his career as he went from here to Cleveland for a year and then on to New England where he played with his twin brother, Devin.
One of those guys everyone knew would be really good in the media when his playing days were over, and then started in the media and has been really good. To no one's surprise at all, he's been as terrific as expected.
And he saw the third best comeback we've ever seen in the playoffs in person down in Jacksonville. Somehow the Chargers didn't win that game.
I take so much more negativity towards Herbert, Staley, and the Chargers in that game than I do positivity with Trevor Lawrence and the Jags.
I see where you're coming from on that, too. And both can be true, but there is an overriding feeling of choke job.
At what point is Justin Herbert Jeff George?
Well,
that's I'm watching that second half,
but also,
and especially when they get the ball back, and I see him take a sack and then throw it short, and I mean, I'm waiting for there's Justin Herbert in a big moment, getting a couple first downs that his team needs.
But then there's also the camp that would say, well, Urban Meyer was not doing so hot with Trevor Lawrence, and then we saw that comeback with Peterson. Meanwhile, you've got Staley, who's doing anything and everything to not win a game on the other sideline.
Staley just looks.
It's very predictable.
Staley doesn't look.
Chargering is what they're calling.
He doesn't look like a human reaction to things. Like he's become the computer or the algorithm or the analytics that he uses. I watch him during the game and I'm thinking, this is like taking
even more so than McDaniel.
The IBM had that he's like a robot thing.
Yeah,
Watson.
Yeah,
I feel like he's Watson. I'm watching Watson. He is a computer amalgamation of a football coach that has no emotion and no humanity on the sideline. That's what I feel like I'm watching when I'm watching Brandon Staley coach a game. When they were falling apart, I'm looking for any reaction. And the guy just continues to kind of chew his gum and pace.
And pick
there's
up a helmet
change,
for Bosa.
No change at all. Yeah, he was the guy who picked up the helmet and he threw it again. Unbelievable.
Chargering now in the dictionary. They went from, wow, this is going to be the hot topic issue for moving forward for the Chargers possibly meeting up against Kansas City to epic collapse. And here's Jacksonville now as the darling of the NFL after making it through the final stretch run in November and December to win the AFC South. Coming up today, the deadline to declare for the NFL draft for any junior looking to enter prior to finishing college. And there was one big quarterback we were all waiting on. That's next on OutKick 360.
Back to the Christian thing in the broad picture. Your father, how many kids, if you don't mind saying, do you have several kids, one kid?
Seven children.
You have 7 children, so you're a big family man. I did not know that.
Yes.
How many sons? Because this is what I kind of want to dig into.
I have 5 sons.
5 sons, perfect. As a Christian man, how do you feel? Like, what is your job when it comes to raising young men in modern America?
Number one, to teach my boys to know and love Jesus. That would be their primary identity in life. To everything else being completely secondary to that. That is number one. Number 2 would be to make them capable men, right? To make them well-rounded, to make them, able to handle themselves, to make them strong physically, able to fight, able to shoot, able to protect their future, their own families. A great quote, Robert Heinlein, and I'm going to butcher it, but I will attempt it anyways. He basically says that a man should be able to plan an invasion, change a diaper, cook a meal, build a house, he just goes down this list of you should be able to do all these things as a man. And then at the very end, he says specialization is for insects. And I did not always think that. All right. I mean, there was times in my life where I didn't care about learning how to weld or be mechanically inclined or any of these other things. I was like, I just want to be a commando. I just want to go and shoot and do hard stuff. And that was a mistake. I mean, I think I've said this before on, I did 2 ship deployments, 2 ARG deployments as a young frogman. And honestly, I was arrogant at the time. And man, here you're on a ship, which was kind of miserable. And I had a bad attitude about it instead of, because I'm like, I should be on land training more. And instead of going, okay, this is where I'm at. Yeah, I don't have to like it, but there's all these master machinists and welders and guys that are, in charge of charts and navigation, to navigate across the globe. And here I could have, if I would have showed just a little bit of interest, those guys would have been happy to be like, oh yeah, I'll teach you how to weld. I'll teach you how to run a lathe, all these things. that now I'm like, man, I want to learn all that stuff. I want to be able to do everything. And some of that's reinforced now. Kind of, we live out on a little bit of a farm, so you do need to be able to, when stuff breaks, you need to be able to fix it yourself, and so there's a lot of value in that. So I want, number one, I want my boys to know and love Jesus, and then number two, to be capable. It's actually, so we do a program called Father-Son Ministry, where it's gone through different iterations. Currently, the way we run it is you show up, we pray, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we start training. And that was very deliberate right there, that, hey, we honor God first, then we honor our nation, and then we start to train. Most of the time we do jiu-jitsu. So that's been just super cool, having the boys go from it just looking clownish, them rolling around, to, man, they're, some of those boys, I will actually, break a sweat rolling with them now, and they will absolutely catch some guys with triangles and arm. Like, they're actually learning jiu-jitsu.
C.J. Stroud to the NFL. No surprise. But today was the deadline, so we had to know one way or the other. And the junior quarterback is entering the NFL draft, where a top 5 pick is pretty much guaranteed $35 million. And he'll be a top 5 pick. I think there will be a chase for all 3 guys, Chad, between Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, and Will Levis.
Did he wait to announce to give the appearance that he was actually considering coming back to Ohio State fans, or did he wait to announce because he was actually considering coming back? Because this felt like an absolute no-brainer layup that he was going to leave as a top 5 pick. I'm not surprised at all. I was surprised he waited till the deadline day to do it. I thought he'd take a couple days after they lost in the semifinal, maybe get up to around the national championship game night or right before that and declare for the draft.
Or was he waiting to see the top 5 draft selection?
Maybe. That's another good theory.
You can wait, and the deadline allows you to see the top 5 picks. Now, what you don't know is which teams are going to trade up. That's out of your control. But the top 5 where he's projected to go, Chicago, Houston, Arizona, Indianapolis, and Seattle. Now, just beyond that, Detroit, Las Vegas, and Atlanta. And Detroit's in a great spot yet again because Seattle could be 2, although Seattle could take him. But if he lasts to 6, just hypothetically.
They're going to get a haul.
Yes, because he's the last guy if he's at 6, right? Because Levis would be off the board.
There's no way he's going to last to 6. I don't. Here's
what I think. There will be that one team.
I believe that someone will trade with the Bears to go get Bryce Young. Here's where the great debate starts. We're going to hear about this now.
Yep.
Combine coming up, all up to the draft. Bryce Young versus C.J. Stroud, and it's we're going to pretend that there's this moving scale of one guy's ahead of the other the whole time. When in reality, it's not going to be the case. But maybe. I believe Bryce Young is the better prospect, but there is going to be a debate now between those two, between Stroud and Bryce Young. I firmly believe someone's trading up with the Bears to draft Bryce Young at 1. I think the floor for C.J. Stroud is Texans at 2. And I don't think he's going past 2.
Okay. Well, I mean, in that case, then he's guaranteed Chicago or Houston, and he knew that as of today. He said it was a very difficult decision, but, I mean, he's certainly – if he's not the most talented, he's we believe the second most talented QB in the draft. And I think he's going to be a solid pro. I don't know if that means, does that mean he's Trevor Lawrence? Does that mean he's Joe Burrow or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes? He can also just be a very steady quarterback, and it's hard to find even 15 of those guys, right? So I think he and Bryce are the 2 to go after. And then there's, to me, a talent drop-off. And I get it. Levis has got talent. I've just seen Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud play that on a more consistent basis on Saturdays. I'm basing it off of that. And that's why I like Bryce Young better. I think Bryce Young, over the course of his tenure as the starting quarterback at Bama, showed up more in big moments than I saw from C.J. Stroud. And by the way, in recency bias, he was awesome against Georgia. I'm going to carry that through the combine and the NFL draft too. That the lasting impression Stroud made with
he was really good against the best in the country.
Yes.
in the biggest moment in that game. What's going to last with me in that game was Ohio State seemingly being okay with a 50-yard attempt when they had a chance to do some things to get a lot closer with those last couple of plays and failed to do so. I think.
And what happens if he has his receiver, his top receiver, too?
Yeah, which was a big blow to him. I think there's so many different levels of what makes a great quarterback. Joe Burrow, almost an immediate hit, or at least into year 2. Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall pick, one-of-a-kind type prospect coming out, got into year 2 before he hit. Maybe C.J. Stroud is Daniel Jones, that it takes to the end of his rookie contract before but then he's going to get paid big. I think it's going to work out regardless. I don't see him as some instant sensation. Right away when he gets his chance, he's going to be the guy. Mm-hmm. I don't know that Bryce Young is that either. I think we may be looking at 2 guys. While I value Bryce Young more than C.J. Stroud, we may have 2 Daniel Jones in this draft. Not from a comp standpoint, but from a career standpoint. Shows some flashes, okay at times, inconsistent, turnover problems at times. It may take until year 3, 4 before or before they really get going for both these guys.
A second coach.
Getting the right offensive coordinator in.
Got a new one coming into Houston, and then who knows what happens in Chicago within the next 3 years.
Yep.
As they try to build the stadium. They're investing in Eberflus, but, Kevin Warren's running that organization now in Chicago. Coming up, we switch gears. We'll talk college hoops, both on the court and the horrible story off of it. That's next.
Since day 1 of 2 weeks to flatten the curve, liberals have been COVID fear-porn nymphomaniacs. They love everything about COVID hysteria, especially Hollywood liberals, from preaching safer at home from the comfort of their mansions, remote learning for your peasant kids as theirs had private tutors, and of course, their beloved masks and their even more beloved vaccines. It's an unhealthy obsession that for some has lasted longer than even COVID itself. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Jimmy Fallon performing the variant song.
There was Alpha, then Delta, Delta, then Omicron next. But this latest variant might be the best. It's XBB.1.5. Another brand of COVID-19 has arrived. It's a new strain, but it isn't the same. Sounds more like Elon Musk's kid's name. It's XBB.1.5.
So there's cringeworthy, and then there's that, which is even worse. But speaking of cringe, this list of losers wouldn't live up to its name if it didn't feature the patriarch, the grandfather, the elder loser himself, Joe Biden.
And here we have folks from the Salvation Army who also have been murdered. So we're only
So I'm not really sure what happened there. I'm not sure if Joe was confused as to who he was meeting, mistaking the man for a Secret Service agent, or if he just wanted to let the guy from the Salvation Army know he's met the Secret Service, who is tasked with following him literally everywhere. I'm just really not sure, but it sure is something. But not only is Joe awfully confused, he's also one big sleepy hypocrite.
Because there can no longer be any question, none. In today's interconnected world, we cannot wall ourselves off from shared problems. We are stronger and better when we work together.
We cannot wall ourselves off to protect our border or our national security, but we sure as hell can fork over $500,000 to build a wall around Joe's Delaware beach house. Isn't that just dandy, folks? But speaking of brain damage, a lot of Democrats beyond Joe suffer from it, but this week the former bartender taught us gas stoves are to blame. No, really. Now look, as much as I would like to dog on AOC for this, I really can't, because if there is one person who knows a thing or two about brain damage, it is most certainly Miss Ocasio-Cortez. If a gas stove is what did that to her, shoot, I'll go electric or unicorn dust or whatever these green hairs prefer now to save my brain from whatever damages hers. You betcha I will. Those are my losers of the week. God bless them.
Just like that, the final hour is here.
We made it.
Monday edition, OutKick 360. Hutton and Withrow with you in Nashville. 6th and Peabody, the home of Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. We've got plenty of headlines to hit. Coming up, we preview Dallas and Tampa, how the Cowboys win, how the Bucs win, and we'll take a look at what's next for the Big Ten for their commissioner. There's some great candidates. Chad will touch on two that are in media and overseeing sports networks, but also two that also make sense from within the conference itself. We'll compare and contrast. But we do start in the Big Ten with our headlines. And Jim Harbaugh, Chad, it appears that he's staying.
This is from Santa Ono, the president of the University of Michigan. Santa Ono says in a statement, he said, this is so odd, first off, in terms of communication of how news is broken. The president of the university, this is both a tweet and also underneath the tweet, a graphic that has the tweet in the graphic that he's tweeting at the time.
So
okay?
he tweeted himself.
He's tweeting a tweet.
Okay.
And then below the tweet is a picture of himself
with the
on
quote.
the field in the big house, and underneath is in nice Michigan letterhead the tweet that he's tweeting. That's above the tweet. Anyway.
Michigan fans are going to love this, though.
Santa Ono says, I just got off the phone with Coach Harbaugh, and Jim shared with me, I love, he's Coach Harbaugh, then he's Jim. Jim shared with me the great news that he is going to remain as the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. That is fantastic news that I have communicated to our athletic director, Ward Manuel, #GoBlue. Now, if you are a skeptic and a cynic like myself, you believe that whatever this is means nothing, actually, because the president is going to now inform, he tweets first, talks to Jim Harbaugh, then tweets that he's going to now inform Ward Manuel that his coach is going to remain at Michigan. I saw some account tweet breaking, Jim Harbaugh announces that he'll probably remain at Michigan for a third time in a week and a half. Jim Harbaugh's been interviewing for jobs. He's been looking around. These jobs have not been filled yet. This would make this would carry a lot more credence for me if the jobs that he was seeking were already filled. That's not happened. So I don't know what to make of this, Hutton.
So
I really don't know what to make of it.
What's keeping him from making the jump?
With
the open opportunity. So Indianapolis.
I'm not calling Santa Ono a liar. I just don't know what to make of him reporting this himself after a phone conversation and in the tweet saying he's now going to get on the phone with his AD to let him know, too, that Jim Harbaugh is the guy.
And there's no word on, and it'll come, but there's no word on any extension or raise or any leveraging that took place here. Denver felt like the landing spot for Jim Harbaugh. And the other two names are Sean Payton, who we've discussed at length, and then Dan Quinn, who coaches tonight as the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. Those are the two names in Denver that continue to make noise. Is this Sean Payton saying that, well, he's going to take the Denver job? I don't think so, because he told Colin Cowherd earlier today that tomorrow or early this week he will be in New York to interview for the Panthers job. They've just named a general manager, Monty Ossenfort, through the Patriots and Titans as the new GM in Arizona. And so there's a hire to be made there now based on their structure and hierarchy and the fact that Bidwell wanted the GM first, which makes sense. But, Chad, this feels like Harbaugh being told, you know what, we're not going to give you what you want wherever. Maybe it's Denver, maybe it's not. And we're going to give it, and we're going to wait on so-and-so. You know, they waiting on Quinn, and then they're going to announce it in Denver. Don't know. But this allows him to get the word out for a guy that, I mean, this tracks, right? Like the idea that you have the president tweet out a tweet of a screenshot of a quote.
Yeah,
it's almost like he boarded a plane and said, let everyone know I'm staying.
I want to hear from Jim Harbaugh before really buying this totally. He needs to speak on it if, in fact, he is definitely staying at Michigan and they're doing some sort of contract extension or whatever, even though they're under NCAA investigation because Jim Harbaugh allegedly lied to the NCAA about some things. I need to actually hear from Jim Harbaugh to believe it. Couple options. Maybe he heard from the one job he wanted that he wasn't getting it, and they just haven't announced yet who it's going to be. Similar to a year ago, he wanted the Vikings gig. They went to Kevin O'Connell, and he didn't get it, and he came limping back to Michigan at that point. But he was very honest about it. He said, yeah, I explored it. He didn't deny it. I was interested in it. They went in a different direction. I decided that I wanted to be here, and he's committed to Michigan. Doing it now, though, makes a lot of sense. If he gets offered a job, now's the time to leave. You're under investigation. You've done a lot already at Michigan. If you were really serious about being in the NFL with his great NFL record, 44-18-1 or whatever it was with the 49ers, now is the time to take a job. We had Dan Dakich on our show earlier of Don't At Me on the OutKick Network. He's very plugged into all things Indianapolis. He said he believes that Irsay wants Harbaugh, but Harbaugh is smart enough to not take that job with the Colts. So if you're buying
fascinating too.
This announcement now would make a lot of sense.
And Harbaugh's confirmed it through Michigan.
And I see, Adam Schefter tweeting Jim Harbaugh's quote.
I love the relationships that I have at Michigan, coaches, staff, families, administration, President Santa Ono, and especially the players and their families. My heart is at the University of Michigan. I once heard a wise man say, don't try to out-happy happy. Go blue. That is Jim Harbaugh announcing he's staying as the head coach in Ann Arbor, not taking an NFL position. Don't know if he was offered one, but
I don't think he was offered one. But I do think that, I buy this.
There are too many openings. If he wanted back in, he could.
But what he's saying is, I buy that he went and talked to some teams and looked around a little bit. It's like Groundhog Day. Taking your head out of the hole, looking around a little bit, gauging the weather, and then decided I'm going to go back into this gopher hole in Ann Arbor because I'm happy in this gopher hole as opposed to the gopher hole in Indy or Denver or somewhere else in the NFL. So Jim Harbaugh will remain with Michigan. Great news for Michigan fans. Great news if you didn't want to see a chaotic chain of events take place.
That's another good point.
If Michigan came open a little later in the game, I believe that Michigan probably would have promoted from within had Harbaugh left at this point, but could have set off a string of events that would have been nuts. Where's the Ryan Day speculation? There was a lot of talk about him getting a job somewhere, getting looks, and that's died down big time.
You haven't heard his name since early last week, really. Chad, Sean Payton revealed to Cowherd what the compensation would likely be if a team's willing to trade with the Saints for the rights to his contract in order to bring him on as their next head coach. And Sean Payton said, hey, Mickey Loomis, he spoke with Mickey Loomis, the Saints GM, is looking for a mid to late first-round pick. That would be the compensation for Sean Payton. Keep in mind, we're only, 20 years removed or whatever it was from John Gruden getting multiple first-round picks. The Raiders did in exchange for his contract in Tampa. And now you're just getting one for Payton. That tells you the value of what these picks were compared to how they will and deal it nonchalantly now.
I still think it's pretty badass that you can go on an interview and say, yeah, it'll cost a first-round pick just to have the rights to discuss paying me $20 million a year to be your head coach.
And he can name it. I mean, if you're willing to pay that money, you've got to be willing to give that. It's not one or the other, right? You're either all in with Payton having full control and all that, or you're not. So why wouldn't you give up the pick for the coach that you believe is going to take your situation to the next level? The thing is, the Broncos don't have that. The Broncos gave up their pick to get Russell Wilson. So they don't have that type of compensation.
And I don't think that's the best gig for him. The best spot just for future, but it's not the best spot from an ownership standpoint, fan base, all those things. It's the Chargers because of his ties with quarterback development, having Justin Herbert. But I don't – all reports today are don't get too excited about Brandon Staley being let go because they may ride it out with this guy because they like him and they don't have the money for a big buyout and then to go big for a Sean Payton or someone else.
Well, and that's also the discussion when it comes to paying the top dollar for Trevor Lawrence and with Herbert because of the organizational structure and the money, cash at hand that you put back in escrow for that. So if you don't have it for Payton, you're not going to have it for Herbert. And if you are not going to have it for Herbert, you have to save it, not give it to Payton.
Yeah. I'm still blown away, by the way, that the president released a statement about talking on the phone with the coach before the coach could release the statement.
Yeah.
I mean, from a recruiting standpoint, don't you want the coach putting out something big that, I'm not leaving? I'm back type thing?
Yes. Yeah.
You know who wins in all this?
But they had both of them prepared.
You know the big winner in all this? Santa Ono, the president at Michigan. Because that guy is doing deals. It's not Ward Manuel. He didn't even think Ward Manuel in this. He thinks one person individually. He thinks President Santa Ono. No mention of Ward Manuel. I don't know if their relationship is bad or what's going on, but Santa Ono, he's a deal maker.
Well, and
guy's out there on Twitter. He's already got the graphic made up with his quote as he tweets it out. Love this guy.
Harbaugh is also, it sounds like he told President Ono, hey, go ahead and let the AD know I'm staying. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't want to talk to him. I've been getting texts from him for the past week straight, but I don't want to respond. Can you get with Ward and let him know that I'll be coming back to coach in Ann Arbor? Please? Thank you.
Just a horrific story with the Alabama basketball program and Darius Miles, charged with capital murder. And you'll see him handcuffed, and he's being walked to the car after being arrested. But the details of this were he and the alleged second suspect walked up to a car and shot and killed a 23-year-old female early Sunday morning in Tuscaloosa. Just awful. And you don't see headlines like this, especially at the programs across college sports where this is something you'll see on the First 48 and not on SEC Network, ESPN, OutKick 360.
This is something you can't just ignore if you're Nate Oates. Let's talk about this from a sports perspective, because I'm not a prosecuting attorney or a defense attorney and don't know all the things with the case and all that, right? We'll let it play out in court and see if he gets convicted of this crime. It certainly doesn't look good that they immediately went and got two people shortly after this woman was tragically, horrifically shot and killed on the street in downtown Tuscaloosa. We asked Dan Dakich about it. I thought he had a very good answer about, I need to know more. I need to wait and see about how much was this kid struggling, how many issues did Nate Oates know about, how long did they keep him on the roster knowing, something like this could even possibly be something down the line that could happen, knowing the kid. You got to know all those things, or did it just come up out of nowhere? Those are all things you got to factor in. But I'm saying this, I know they can hide behind legalities right now and not wanting to say too much because there's a trial that has to take place. But you have to eventually, when you bring a kid on campus and you recruit them and give them a scholarship, and that person, if what's alleged is true, if that person kills another human in the town you brought them to and the school you brought them to, you must speak on it. You must talk about it. You must say what you thought about the kid, if there were issues going on, I'm not expecting that to happen right now from Nate Oates. I understand all this. This is bigger than basketball. But Nate Oates, this is a big story in large part because it is an Alabama basketball player. So we have to acknowledge the basketball program part of this. Nate Oates is going to have to speak about this.
Well, and it's also, it's a player who is not in the downtown city playing. He's not in a metropolitan area. This took place on the Strip in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, it's not right. It's not a Georgia Tech player gunning someone down on the streets of Atlanta where, murder happens all the time in Atlanta, unfortunately.
Right.
This is very rare for that community. I agree with the difference with that. And here's the other thing. Nate Oates has a hell of a basketball team.
Well, they've lost 2 games, is
that
right?
They are incredible, and they own arguably the best win in America where they went on the road and beat Houston, who's number 1 in the country. And they've got Brandon Miller, who might be the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming draft. Terrific freshman from Nashville, Tennessee. That's awesome to watch. It's a great team. They do everything well at Alabama. This is, again, from a basketball program standpoint, about the worst off-court thing I can imagine happening at this time. Now, the one basketball thing you'd say about it is they haven't had him this season. So it's not like a starter went out and did this, right? It's someone who hasn't been a part of the team on the court in games this year. Still horrific, though, for that community, for the young woman, obviously, and her family, but for that program. And Nate Oates is going to have to speak about this. Again, I'm not expecting it right now. He's going to have to talk at length about what went on. You can't just sweep this under the rug and not talk about it. And I have a feeling, seeing how head-on he takes things, he's going to talk about it when it's time. I don't think he's going to duck it.
Coming up, how Dallas wins on the road in Tampa, how the Bucs take down the Cowboys, and is the losing coach out? Is Brady done in Tampa if they, in fact, lose this evening? We will discuss that. We will discuss the teams that are already being mentioned for Tom Brady in 2023. It includes Tampa. And then we'll switch gears and discuss in the Big Ten who replaces Kevin Warren as commissioner. That and more straight ahead on OutKick 360.
another edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. Happy to be joined by my buddy from the Sporting News, Bill Bender. It feels like it's been about a day since I have seen Bill, which is the case since we were out there in rainy California. Bill, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, we didn't get tanned. We did not get a tan in sunny LA. We got rained on all week, didn't we?
That was depressing. Like, I go out there and I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be sunny. It's going to be California. It's going to be nice. No, it turns out it's raining. We're getting drenched during the post-game ceremonies on the field. I don't know. Whoever came up with the idea for that stadium did not think about the rain that would come in sideways.
No, it was a interesting weekend for sure. I'm glad you and I got to connect a little bit and go to media day, and then the game. I don't know what to talk about. You start. I've been using the analogy as like you brought Cinderella to the final, and you ended up watching Carrie.
Yeah, is it? I mean, in looking back on it and how everything plays out, I think if Michigan beats TCU, we get a better game, in the final. But turns out that TCU had their number, and you go into this matchup with Georgia, and they're just such a dominant football team from the offensive line, the defensive line, the wide receivers, you name it, and you look at TCU and they had their flaws, and I don't even think Kondre Miller being a running back for TCU would have done anything for the Horned Frogs. I just think they're Jalen Carter and what Georgia's defensive line was able to do. I think it just showed throughout the season that they just wrapped up what they had done for the 13 games prior.
Yeah, right off the bat, there was a false start. And after the game, Sonny Dykes said, we'd only had 3 false starts the whole season. So right off the bat, there's nerves. You heard him talk about how they overran things, may have, missed assignments, breakdowns, and you can't have that many. And it showed. I mean, they had multiple, and you can't have that against the team that's a heavyweight like Georgia that's been there, done that. Their execution in the first quarter, especially on offense, was unbelievable, especially with Bennett. And honestly, I thought this game was probably, and this is horrible to say, I thought it was probably over at 17-7.
I don't disagree. I mean, it got so out of hand. You started wondering, okay, what's going to be the title to your story? I mean, it just didn't feel like it was going to be close, no matter what TCU did. And I give credit to how the game was set up and played, and the atmosphere and whatnot. TCU fans traveled well, Georgia fans traveled well. It made for a fun environment. I think when you look at the game, though, Georgia is just a dominating force. And I want your opinion on this. We use the word dynasty a lot. I think in college basketball, I think in baseball, I think in football, we use it a lot, NFL. Is Georgia at that mark yet, or would they need to win another one in the next 2 years to maybe set up the whole dynasty conversation? Or are we here with the back-to-back titles?
I think we're here because, so they'll be our lifetime, I think, the 4th team to have a chance to go for a three-peat. And I go look at those 3 teams, and I was talking about this earlier today with somebody. Nebraska won back-to-back with Osborne, and then that 3rd year, we all know where we were when Arizona State beat them.
The winner of Dallas and Tampa will be in San Francisco on Sunday evening, 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern on Fox. That will be the final game of the weekend. So your divisional round schedule starts on Saturday with Jacksonville on the road in Kansas City. That game is at 4:30 Eastern on NBC.
Yep.
Giants-Eagles, 8:15 on Fox. Sunday, Bengals-Bills at 3 o'clock Eastern CBS, and either Dallas or Tampa against San Francisco Sunday evening. And we get a good game tonight where I've gone back and forth on this all weekend on how it plays out. When we mentioned this on what will be a good game from Wildcard weekend, I don't think if this game ends up close, it's good.
Which game?
The Dallas-Tampa.
Yeah.
Because if it's close, Tampa has, they have really made this.
They've done something very uncharacteristic.
Yeah.
To me, if it's a good, well-played offensive game, structurally sound, close, high-scoring game, that would be very against type for this year's Tampa team and for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
In many ways, if it's that way.
Yeah, because the Cowboys win. They're winning by double digits. And with Tampa, I just don't see them running away with it. No matter what, Dak does or does not do. Dallas gets the football back. They have a league high 33 takeaways, and they have second in turnover differential at plus 10. And that's with Dak Prescott throwing a pick once every 24 attempts. So I want to see Brady advance. I'm on that camp. I don't want it to end one and done with him. And Dakich mentioned this, Chad. I am a sucker for the drama that will unfold in Dallas if they, in fact, lose this game.
I'm a sucker for that. I also, so it's the winner of this game gets San Francisco.
Yes.
I would much rather see Cowboys-Niners in the next round. So I'm a little conflicted. I'm not conflicted about what I want to see happen. I want to see Brady win. I want to see, more than anything, the chaos of what happens if Dak loses this game. Is Mike McCarthy out? Do we now suddenly have the Cowboys in play for Sean Payton? All those things are very, very interesting to me. I'm way more interested in just projecting to next weekend in a Cowboys-Niners matchup than I am a Bucs-Niners matchup.
So I agree, and we've seen the Niners throttle Tampa. The other intriguing thing,
this is my childhood, by the way. Early mid-'90s, I was a Niners fan at the time, and that was always the game. I hated the Cowboys more than anyone else. Niners Cowboys. I'd love to see that again.
So how would you bet this at outkick.com/bet?
I'm with
I'll double
you.
check the line for you.
By the way, I should have parlayed your two money line winners. You win Jacksonville and Tampa, right?
Yeah.
So I did bet Jacksonville. I should have live bet it when they were down 27-0. How about the guy, by the way, that put $1.4 million down
to win $11,000? To win
$11,800 when it was 27-0.
So
and instead he just lost 1.4 million.
Why is it 1.4? Why is it exactly 1.4?
I don't. He must have had a reason, but that's what he went with.
I mean, a total payout would have been
11,200.
Yeah, and he puts down on the money line $1.4 million when the game is 27-0.
And I mean, the thought is, this is just an easy 11,200 for me.
Yeah,
if you have that much money.
And just the DK Sportsbook is the one that confirmed the bet was made.
I mean, imagine watching that comeback though.
And then
what's that guy's reaction when Joey Bosa slams the helmet?
Yeah, and then they have the game-winning kick at the end.
I can't look. I'm hoping for his sake or her sake, whoever placed it, that they're so loaded that it doesn't affect them big time.
Can you imagine?
But I mean, that could be some serious problems for that man and his family, or something else going. That could be their entire net worth, for all I know. I need to know that, Darren Ravel puts these great tweets out about these bets. I want to know the rest of the story. Let's expand this thing out to the Netflix series about this guy that did it, and then what happened after that bet, or who is he? Right?
Was
is
he
it some
trying to get
real
a used
estate
car?
mogul with a ton of money?
Trying to buy a used car for his daughter? Or
Is that person's net worth $1.5 million and they just put $1.4 million on this game because they needed the $11,200 to pay back a mafioso so they didn't have their legs broken? I need to know all these things. Because it sounds, oh man, that's a tough night for that guy. And I'm thinking, well, it's not that tough if it's a billionaire, but if it's just some dude living in the suburbs, yeah. I mean, that's a life record.
It was like Brandon Staley's father or something that did it.
Brandon Staley's father probably knows better and bet on the Jags money line at 27-0.
What would the payout have been for him? Do we know what the? That's another thing I want to know. Like if he would have flipped it and put 1.4 on the money line.
Down 27-0.
Yes.
Now that is a big play. Can you imagine? Whew.
And you're doing that with Trevor Lawrence, who had just turned it over 4 times, 3 picks in the first quarter. I looked up. That was a long first quarter. I'm thinking, how many turnovers now in the first half, and they still not finished the quarter in Jacksonville.
There was.
I'm also thinking like this is the worst outright money line upset pick I've ever had. I'm not doing this again.
There was a lot of talk, by the way. A couple of announcer notes from this weekend. One, I thought Al Michaels on NBC was way overhyped. We hear Al Michaels all the time. I didn't hear a big difference when he was on with Tony Dungy. I hear a guy who, even on the game-winning kick, was just kind of subdued. Al Michaels seems over it to me. I love Al Michaels. I mean,
how is he 80? How old is he?
Well,
let me look it up.
Yeah, but I mean, you're allowed, if you don't have the energy to do it, to retire.
He's 78.
The amount of money he's. I mean, look, if someone's going to throw barrels of cash at you to do it, and even if you don't really want to do it, I guess you keep taking the money. But
I still think he's very good, and I don't think he's like lost his faculties by any means.
No,
but I'm saying everyone's like, who is this guy with low energy? I'm thinking
that's Al Michaels.
This dude walks around cities eating nothing but filet, and traveling the great cities of America, calling football games while you sit on your couch eating ice cream, complaining about his energy level.
Well, if you're saying who's this guy with a low energy, then that's a bad tweet to begin with because it's Al Michaels. Is the guy with the low energy. You should know who Al Michaels is. No, but they're saying
what they're saying, who I know who Al Michaels is. This doesn't sound like Al Michaels. That's what they're saying. And it may not. I mean, I would chalk it up to he hasn't been the same since he left for Amazon Prime on Thursday Night Football. But I still enjoy when he's calling the game.
I honestly thought the sound mix sounded different. Even Kirk Herbstreit sounds different on that Prime Video game as opposed to ESPN on Saturday night. It was almost like they went up with the crowd noise and down with the announcer's voice, and it made them sound subdued. Then I watch this game Saturday, and I think, oh, no, Al Michaels is just subdued now. This is who he is as a broadcaster.
I also think that Dungy paired with him is better for the NFL aspect.
I agree.
I love Kirk on college, but not pro. And I think that's also what people are conditioned to. But that doesn't have to be the hard and fast rule either. But having him paired with Dungy was a good move by NBC. I thought Dungy was excellent with the analysis there of the game. What was your second broadcast note of the weekend? We'll get back to it.
Tony Romo is bad.
I love him.
What's happened though? Like I don't know. Is this all right? This is it you or is it me thing? And I'm talking about me and Tony Romo. In the beginning, I thought he was refreshing. I thought his genuine excitement and happiness for the game was charming, and I enjoyed listening to him on the call. We all loved how he could call out the play that was going to happen before it happened and see these things. And the more I watch him, I'm like, either he hasn't taken the next step and gotten any better, or he's leaned more into that persona, and it's just annoying now. But there's something about him I don't like. And he asked Gene Steratore when he's in the booth, all right, Gene, we got you up here. What's your prediction now? It was 17-0 at the time. What's your final score prediction? And Gene says, I can't do that, but I just hope for a well-called game, officiating-wise. And, he gave a quick, good answer. And people were crushing me for saying, oh, he's joking. He wasn't joking. Well, they were out of things to say, and he asked a dumb question. Well, and I don't think he knows that he can't do that in the booth.
But he's known for scripting out the finishes before they happen, which he also did in that broadcast where he told Jim Nantz, this is going to happen, and then they're going to end up getting the ball back with just enough time to throw a Hail Mary. And there was like 4 minutes left. So he's doing all the math, and Nance was like, it's as if we've already called this game and Tony's scripted it out, because that's also like, I understand why that's annoying, but it's also very intriguing that he can come up with that on the fly, inside the quarterback's mind. There was this one play, though, and I understand the frustration a little bit because there was a replay.
I don't know if it's me and I've gotten more annoyed with what he always was, or if he's actually gotten worse. I'm leaning towards he's gotten worse or just hasn't gotten better, and now it's becoming annoying.
So he had this. There was a review. I can't remember the play yesterday, but he was certain that there was so much uncertainty that the call wasn't going to stand. Like you weren't going to be able to confirm it, and they were like going to break or something, and the call on the field stands, and he's like, again, it may have been the reverse of that, but it was the opposite of what he thought would happen.
He thought definitively would happen.
Yeah, because there was just not enough evidence to do something with the review, and so he goes back. He's like, so it stands, which means they can't confirm it. Is it a good call? Well, I guess maybe. And then they go to break, which is actually the definition of stands. They can't confirm it, and they're going to go with what was on the field and not what was definitive one way or the other. I do think, though, he's very likable for me with the way he watches the game and the overall enjoyment that he's having while he's calling the game. I don't think you normally get that from crew to crew. It's either extremely analytical or it's way too much on the opposite side. And he's just kind of spitballing it, but not because he knows these offenses and the tendencies, and he knows the calls, the checks. They'll change these across the league every week. And by checking it, he can say, "Oh, they checked to this. They're gonna throw right here instead of left, Jim. Here they go." And then they're off to the races. Now, not every call is exactly how he's saying it, but 9 times out of 10, it's some similar version of that, and I'm fascinated by it.
I think his enthusiasm is genuine. I think his play calling and seeing what's about to happen is good. I don't have a problem with that. I think if people are going to crush Chris Collinsworth for being a little cheesy and over-the-top supportive of players and defensive of players at times, I think we got to say the same thing for Tony Romo. He's not saying a lot of critical things over the course of a game when I'm watching him. I like Collinsworth better. I've come to the point where
I like Collinsworth too.
I think Collinsworth is great. I always liked him. He gets a lot of criticism. I think he's better than Tony Romo. I don't have the specific examples right now, but he's also asked 2 or 3 questions to Jim Nance over the course of a game that makes me think that he's like savant level in certain areas with the game, and then just doesn't even know basic rules or concept at other times. He's asked things where Jim Nance is like, no, that's a 5-yard penalty. Or something where you can tell he's embarrassed to answer him on the question. Are they going to do this, Jim? What do you know? What are they going to do? But I think it's just also him. He just says what he's thinking, right? He's not going to sit and think about what should I say in this moment. A lot of it's just, I'm going to say what's on my mind. And if I sound dumb, so be it in that moment, which can be good, I guess, at times. It's real, at least.
It's live. That's that much we can say. Chad, the losing coach tonight, are they out? Everyone's talking McCarthy.
I'm going to go 85%. 85, 90% yes on McCarthy. I'm going to go 60% on Todd Bowles. I think that the odds are lower for Todd Bowles to be a one and done.
Okay.
But it's still over 50% if they lose.
I find it intriguing that there's a report out of Tampa that the behind-the-scenes riff with Arians and Brady was overblown. I don't know why that's coming out right now, unless you're getting out in front of a story that Arians is, again, I'm speculating, coming back, or you're bringing him back to assist the offense that took a step back in 2022. He was in the building already, though, so let's all keep that in mind. It's not like he's been away and they're going to bring him back in. But he also hand-selected Todd Bowles and certainly wouldn't want him to be a one-and-done. Brady is being mentioned around the league for the Bucs, Raiders, and the Titans. We learned today from Chris Greer, the GM of the Dolphins, that they're sticking with Tua as their quarterback. But the Bucs want Brady back. I think the assumption is he's not staying. And no one is saying that he's stepping away from the game. He'll be age, 46 next season. So it really comes down to whether or not Brady gets what he wants to stay. To me, if Todd Bowles is out, if they lose. I don't think it's win or lose. It's if are they keeping or losing Brady. I think that's a main factor in all of this. And does Brady want to keep the status quo? And what do you make of the Arians' report that no big deal? It was way overblown. I'm thinking, well, it's January now. We could have used this in April of last year.
What's the obvious Brady destination, if not Tampa?
Vegas.
This is what I struggle with, though, because you're in a tougher conference in the AFC. If you go to Vegas, you're in a tough division with the Chiefs, arguably the best team in football that you play twice a year. They're not good in Tampa.
Right.
They won their division. So if you want to get in the tournament and get in the dance, he should stay in Tampa.
Well, I mean, in that case,
I think his chances are better there than with Vegas. I also think that if he goes to Vegas, that offense is going to be better than what he's dealing with in Tampa.
Ooh, yes.
So that part of it would be fun. I struggle, Hutton, because it would be one thing if it was just his team sucks and this team is great and all they need is 45-year-old Tom Brady and they can win a Super Bowl. And I don't know that there's the obvious fit of Brady to that team to where he just says, I'm out, I want to go here, and then that happens. We talked about Aaron Rodgers. There's plenty of places you could say right now it's a better situation than in Green Bay with the season they had in that division, right? But there's also not just the no-brainer for him. There's not that one destination that everything is in place but quarterback that's a team that's really good.
Well, the
roster that's really good.
Either guy makes them a contender just by dropping them in. And them being you could pretty much, not every team, but the average team, by adding one of those two guys, you are adding a playoff element, a belief, a it factor. Aside from like the Hall of Fame future, all that, I mean, Brady, it's not like the Bucs were any good whenever Brady selected them either and decided to not go to the West Coast with Los Angeles, but actually go to Tampa. I'm intrigued that I think the storyline that no one's talking about is that he could stay. And if he stays, what does that mean structurally within the organization? Because they have made it clear they would like for him to be back. And somehow you're right, they're not good. That's why I'm torn on, actually picking them. I did because it's Brady. If it's any other normal playoff quarterback, there's no way I'm picking Dallas to lose this game.
Here's a weird one for you, just for someone. Seattle?
Yes.
That's a good roster around Geno Smith.
Well, I mean, the Raiders are good.
And it's a young roster.
The Raiders lost.
I'm looking at Seattle.
How many double-digit leads?
I get it. I'm also thinking staying in the NFC or being in an advantageous spot to grab a good playoff position. Seattle was in the playoffs, right, this year with Geno Smith. So Geno Smith also had a really good year. So maybe you're thinking Geno Smith's a better option right now. I just wish that there was this no-brainer, boy, Brady needs to be here next year to have a chance at a long playoff run. I don't know that there is one, and for that reason, I think he's back in Tampa. Now, you bring up an interesting question. What does that mean? Who's coaching him? What's going on around him with that roster? Who's staying? Who's getting the boot? Are they trying to do something to spend big? How's that salary cap being restructured? All of those questions are pertinent ones.
And who's he bringing with him?
There's not that one no-brainer option outside of Tampa, which makes me think he may just come back.
One thing I think everyone agrees on is he's not retiring.
I don't think you do what he did and call Giselle's bluff to just end it after a wild card round playoff loss and not play another year or two. Personally. And he's so competitive.
That's the issue.
Right? I don't think
mentally he could deal with that.
to where it's okay. I made the decision I made. These things happen as a consequence, and now I'm just going to quit and retire after a loss in the playoffs to the Cowboys? No. Well, that's not the Tom Brady I know. But he's going to play until he's 48.
This is how the storylines will go. It's really week to week with the reaction to him. They could go out and beat Tampa, that for the most part they've been all season offensively tonight, and get just
hammered.
Just blown out, boat raced. I mean, that's realistic based on how potent this Dallas offense can be. Not that they are, but can be. And the sentiment tomorrow will be, you know what, man, he's going to be 46. It's over. It's been a great run, but somehow you got this team to the playoffs. It's done. I'm not going to be saying that. I want this guy to play for as long as he wants. I love watching him play football. I do want to see him in contention. He does have the healthiest roster he's had in, 3 months. And now he's got Mike Evans. I mean, based on their talent level, they are also capable of putting up points. The question is, can they keep up with Dallas? And is Dak going to be the quarterback that we believe he can be, or the quarterback he has been, which is a turnover machine?
This game has strong Dak Prescott chokes vibes to me.
But
I think the more likely scenario is the Bucs win an ugly game because Dak turns it over 2 or 3 times, and Tom Brady doesn't choke. That's
and
if the Bucs are to
again,
win, that's the most likely. But I'm with you too. Cowboys are better.
Yes.
If they go out and play well, they could win by 2 or 3 scores.
Coming up, who replaces Kevin Warren as the commissioner of the Big Ten? We'll discuss on OutKick 360.
Back to the Christian thing in the broad picture. Your father, how many kids, if you don't mind saying, do you have several kids, 1 kid?
7 children.
You have 7 children, so you're a big family, man. I did not know that.
Yes.
How many sons? Because this is what I kind of want to dig into.
I have 5 sons.
5 sons, perfect. As a Christian man, how do you feel, like, what is your job when it comes to raising young men in modern America?
Number one, to teach my boys to know and love Jesus. That would be their primary identity in life. To everything else being completely secondary to that. That is number one. Number 2 would be to make them capable men, right? To make them well-rounded, to make them, able to handle themselves, to make them strong physically, able to fight, able to shoot, able to protect their future, their own families. A great quote, Robert Heinlein, and I'm going to butcher it, but I will attempt it anyways. He basically says that a man should be able to plan an invasion, change a diaper, cook a meal, build a house, he just goes down this list of, you should be able to do all these things as a man. And then at the very end, he says specialization is for insects. And I did not always think that. All right. I mean, there was times in my life where I didn't care about learning how to weld or be mechanically inclined or any of these other things. I was like, oh, I just want to be a commando. I just want to go and shoot and do hard stuff. And that was a mistake. I mean, I think I've said this before. I did 2 ship deployments, 2 ARG deployments as a young frogman, and honestly, I was arrogant at the time. And man, here you're on a ship, which was kind of miserable, and I had a bad attitude about it. Instead of because I'm like, I should be on land training more, and instead of going, okay, this is where I'm at. Yeah, I don't have to like it, but there's all these master machinists and welders and guys that are, in charge of charts and navigation, to navigate across the globe. And here I could have, if I would have showed just a little bit of interest, those guys would have been happy to be like, oh yeah, I'll teach you how to weld. I'll teach you how to run a lathe, all these things. That now I'm like, man, I want to learn all that stuff. I want to be able to do everything. And some of that's reinforced now. Kind of, we live out on a little bit of a farm, so you do need to be able to, when stuff breaks, you need to be able to fix it yourself, and so there's a lot of value in that. So I want, number one, I want my boys to know and love Jesus, and then number 2, to be capable. it's actually, so we do a program called Father-Son Ministry where it's gone through different iterations. Currently, the way we run it is you show up, we pray, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we start training. And that was very deliberate right there, that, hey, we honor God first, then we honor our nation, and then we start to train. Most of the time we do jiu-jitsu, so that's been just super cool, having the boys go from it just looking clownish, them rolling around, to, man, they're, some of those boys, I will actually, break a sweat rolling with them now, and they will absolutely catch some guys with triangles and armbar. Like, they're actually learning jiu-jitsu.
Who replaces Kevin Warren? That's the next big question for college sports. Warren's off to be the president and CEO of the Chicago Bears starting in April. And Chad, now Gene Smith from Ohio State has been mentioned. Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, who they sought the first time prior to hiring Kevin Warren 3.5 years ago. And there are TV execs as well from ESPN and Fox Sports that are also making this list. But
that's the one I threw out there.
Yeah.
Why not go the television route and just bridge the gap and hire someone that's a TV executive?
I wonder. So this is where like the college football rivalry meets what's best for business and the president aspect of things, the votes. So for all the criticism that Kevin Warren received during COVID, Gene Smith was the opposite, and that's where he took over as the quote-unquote leader of 2020 within the Big Ten.
He was the one who thought they should play.
Yeah, and was considering even just, they were breaking off to doing
their own schedule.
Independent. Yeah, and many believed that was the right path. Turns out it was. Right to play. And I think many others would follow Gene Smith in that regard, given that time then. I think that also led to Kevin Warren not receiving a contract extension recently.
Yeah, I think it'd be a big loss for Ohio State. He's highly respected. If Gene Smith were to be the guy.
Great for the Big Ten, though.
I keep thinking there's going to be some complete outside the box, off the wall candidate
like
that gets
Warren
a serious
was,
look
coming from the league.
I think, a CEO of McDonald's. I don't know.
Yeah.
Someone from a different walk of life that we've seen with both Yormark and Kliavkoff with Big 12 and Pac-12 respectively. There's some outside candidate from a different walk of life, not athletic administration, that I believe could fit into this. You got Greg Sankey taking shots, at a speaking engagement about, I'm not here. I'm here for the good of college athletics and not to build my resume and move on, which was not a very subtle shot at Kevin Warren.
Yeah. The rivalry continues.
The rivalry continues, and it's man down for the Big Ten because they don't have a commissioner right now.
No, I'm saying between the two.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was laughing when we came back from break because Irvin Magic Johnson on Twitter just tweeted. I saw Barstool Big Cat retweet it and said, in case you missed it, just right now out of nowhere, he says, what a wild and exciting NFL wildcard weekend. The Jags came from a 27-point deficit to win their game, and the Giants upset the Vikings. I love a day later, he's just giving updates on the games. So his followers that aren't man, I need to go back and watch that Jags come back. You're telling me, Irvin, that the Jags were down big and came back and won. Who did they play? It doesn't say here who they played. And the Giants upset the Vikings. What a weekend in the NFL. It's just great getting the NFL report from Magic himself.
What if he sent that and it just now went through randomly?
Or he just has some marketing agent that's just
they scheduled it a day late.
Yeah, there's someone who's just tweeting things as Magic Johnson that's just a bunch of random sports updates for his followers. That could be the case too.
You can go to outkick.com/bet. That's where you can play on the Monday night matchup tonight, Wildcard Weekend, Dallas at Tampa. The over is 4-1 in Tampa's last 5. 5-2 in Dallas's last 7. The over-under right now is 45.5. So based on recent results, you should take the over in this. I'm hesitant, though, because I think it's a 50-50 shot that this is not much of a game due to Tampa.
So you don't know what you're betting right now?
I'm staying away from the over-under, even though the numbers are telling me to take the over, the trends. I'm taking Tampa money line.
And I consider one money line winner when they're the underdog to be a heater. You had that with your pick of Jacksonville. Ride the heater. Let's go Tampa also in this game.
And now the discussion, I don't know why it's happening right now. Michael David Smith from Pro Football Talk. Is he
tweeting out updates from the
manager.
playoff weekend also?
No, he says there's really no reason at all Bengals-Bills should be played at Buffalo, opposed to being determined by a coin flip or neutral field. The NFL just decided to change its rules for home field in both the wild card and championship rounds, but not the divisional round. So he's saying, like, you get the rematch, but because they didn't face off, well, I mean, no one was discussing that. It was all about, Kansas
AFC
City.
Championship.
Yeah, which can still be in play, by the way, in Atlanta.
I mean, I thought Joe Burrow had a great response to that when asked about it. He kind of gave that, well, it is what it is, but he said, more than anything, we're part of the NFL family as players. And what happened that night, we're not going to sit around and complain about it, that we didn't get to play that game on the field because we're most concerned with Damar Hamlin. He said all the right things. I mean, people that want to criticize it aren't wrong based on the rules and what we weren't allowed to see, right? So, I mean, yeah.
Give me Tampa tonight. Tampa at San Francisco next week. I'm with you, though, Chad. The San Francisco-Dallas game is way more intriguing for the divisional round. For the right for Dallas to go back to the NFC Championship game, potentially at Philly.
I'm ready for all of it. And then I'm ready for Magic Johnson to give me
let
an
us know
update
about it.
About 48 hours after these big games happen. I want to know from Magic's own Twitter account exactly what took place.
Join us for the headlines tomorrow starting at 3 o'clock Eastern for OutKick 360 across the OutKick network.